Ever since I posted my 2 TransAmerica Trail videos, I've had a number of questions about my camping gear. So I thought I would take this opportunity to show you what gear I took and then talk about whether or not I would take that same gear again or whether I would take something else. So a couple things about moto camping gear in general. First, you want it to be compact, and second, you want it to be light. Really, it's not that much different than backpacking. So if you think backpacking gear, you're probably in the same general realm as moto camping gear. So let's start by talking about my tent. I have used this tent on 2 TransAmerica Trail trips around the South Carolina Adventure Route, multiple motorcycle rallies, and some other things too. It's made by Hike and Bike, and it's a Yosemite 2-person tent. I like 2-person tents because you're able to get your gear inside with you out of the weather and keep it dry, and you can reorganize and things like that inside your tent at night without having to do it outside, especially if it's raining. This tent, I have no complaints about it. It's been a phenomenal tent. It's a value-priced tent. Hike and Bike sells directly to consumers. I think they may also sell through Amazon, but you definitely can buy directly from the company. Don't quote me, but I think this tent is like $110 or something. And it's a great value. So I would use this tent again. So next, let's talk about sleeping bags. I've taken 2 different types of sleeping bags on my trips. On my first TransAmerica Trail trip, I took this sleeping bag, which, as you can see, packs up really lightly. It's by Thermarest. It's called the Space Cowboy, and it's a 45-degree bag. So if it's warm, this bag is really perfect. It's all you need. If it's cold, this bag is not going to be enough. So therefore, I have a bag liner. This bag liner is by Sea to Summit. It's called their Reactor, and it adds 14 degrees of coverage to the bag. So if this is a 45-degree bag, don't make me do public math, but 45 minus 14 would be 31 degrees. So theoretically, this bag is good down to 31 degrees with this liner. I have to say, this liner makes a huge difference. So on my first TransAmerica Trail trip, I had this bag and this liner up at altitude in Colorado, and we woke up to snow flurries one morning. And I was cold at night, but I wasn't super cold. I was able to get some sleep anyway. And really, on the TransAmerica Trail, there's only a few nights where you're really up at altitude like that. So for me, it was doable. And as you can see, this combination is a really compact combination, so there's something to be said for that. The other option is to take a 3-season bag. This is a Thermarest 3-season bag, and it's a 20-degree bag. So the difference between these two really is pretty noticeable. As you can see, the 20-degree bag is way bigger than the 45-degree bag. For me, 53 years old, my bones are starting to hurt. I kind of like to be able to spread out on a cushy sleeping bag in my tent. So I gave up some packing space on my most recent TransAmerica Trail trip to have this cushier sleeping bag. Both of those sleeping bags are Thermarest sleeping bags. And one of the things that I really like about them is that they have a loop system under the bag that goes around your sleeping pad, which keeps your bag from sliding off your sleeping pad in the middle of the night, which for me is a big deal. If your bag slides off that sleeping pad, you're going to get cold and you may get condensation on the bottom of your bag, and it's just nice to be able to have those loops to keep it on the sleeping pad. So in my opinion, both of those bag combinations are good. I would go with either one. It really probably depends on what temperature you're going to be camping in. So let's talk about sleeping pads. So this is an insulated inflatable sleeping pad by Big Agnes, and it's been phenomenal. Before this pad, I had a inflatable foam pad that I got from Amazon, and I used it through the first part of my first TransAmerica Trail trip, and it developed a hole. And so when I was in Salida, Colorado, I had to scramble and find an outdoor store, and that's where I purchased this. And I've used this a ton since then, and it's been great. No complaints at all with this, and I would buy it again. Sleeping would not be complete without a pillow. There are a lot of ways to skin this cat, and this is a camping pillow. that I have in a stuff sack, and you really can use anything in a stuff sack. You can use clothes in a stuff sack, you can use other gear inside of your stuff sack, you can use inflatable pillows. I've used the inflatable pillows. I'm not a fan. They really aren't that comfortable, and they also really don't insulate very well, so your head gets cold at night. And if your head gets cold at night, you're cold at night. But you have to have something to put your head on, something with some insulation to it. Like I said, if you're really in a space crunch, just bring an empty stuff sack, shove some clothes in it, and you'll be good to go. So moving on with campground comfort, this is a foldable chair by Tusk. As you can see, it folds up pretty small. If you're camping at a place that doesn't have a place to sit down, you'll quickly wish you had a chair. So the nice thing about these chairs is that they can get wet, and it's not a huge deal. So whether you have space inside your luggage or you just want to strap it onto the back of your seat or something, these are pretty handy. Is it an absolute necessity? No. But again, if you have space and you're going to be camping where there is no place to sit, this beats the heck out of sitting on wet ground. So moving on to a few safety items here. You've probably seen these in Walmart or many other stores. These are called hot hands. They're air-activated hand warmers. They'll save your bacon if you've been riding in the rain and your hands are wet, or if it gets unexpectedly cold, or if you don't have heated grips on your bike. Also, you can use these to heat up your sleeping bag. You just break one open, stick it down by your feet in your sleeping bag, and it will keep you warm at night. These are cheap. You can get them at Walmart. You don't need a ton of them, and as you can see, they take up almost no space. So I highly recommend some of those if you might be camping in cool weather. So moving on to a few other safety items. This is an emergency blanket, one of those silver blankets, and as you can see, they take up almost no space. Here's an emergency poncho in case you need to keep yourself or anything else dry. Again, takes up almost no space. Something else you definitely want to consider if you're going to be camping in the wilderness is some sort of water purification system. So for me, I just throw this life straw in the bottom of my pannier, and it sits in the bottom, and I just throw my stuff on top of it. Never had to use it, thank goodness, but it's there if I need it. The second option is to use these water purification tablets. Also, they don't take much space, but if you're going to be camping away from civilization and you might crash, become injured, and need water for a period of time, or for that matter, if your bike breaks down and you need to replenish your water, these or the life straw are a great option to have. So highly recommend taking one of those. Whether you intend to or not, you may show up to your campground in the dark and need to set up camp, or you may need to be doing things in the dark, so you've got to have some kind of light. I have a headlamp just like this that's already unpackaged that I use. This thing's been bulletproof. I've used it for years and no issues at all. The batteries last forever. I highly recommend it. This one's made by Princeton Tech. If you're wise, you will not leave home without these two items. Spare toilet paper in case of emergency, and likewise some baby wipes, also in case of emergency, or in case you just need to give yourself a bath when there is no other option available. Speaking of baths, you might find that you need to dry yourself off with something. So this is a microfiber camping towel. And as you can see, it's pretty small, packs lightly, dries really quickly. So I highly recommend this or one like it. So what if you have to cut wood for some reason? It's pretty rare that you actually have to cut wood. Do you have to have a campfire? No. Do you have to cut the tree out of the way on the trail? Maybe. There is a possibility that you could get so far down a road that you only have enough gas to go forward and not enough to backtrack, and there's a tree in your way. That's the only instance really where you would need to be able to cut wood. I've got two options for cutting wood. I don't bring both of them. In fact, I usually don't bring any of them, to be honest. But if you do need to bring one, I have a Sven saw, and this Sven saw opens up and connects to itself, so you end up with a triangular shaped saw that is great for cutting logs. Super lightweight, packs really thinly. As you can see, these Sven saws are really nice tools to have. The other option is to have a hatchet. This is a Gerber hatchet. It actually weighs more than the Sven saw. And to be honest, I don't think I've ever really used this. The thing that this would be nice for is shaving wood to make kindling and fire starter. If I knew I was going to possibly need one of these two tools, I think I would probably opt for the Sven saw, but really either one would probably work. One more thing that I think is pretty critical to the camping gear is this. It's just a little stuff sack that I have, and inside I have about 8 clothespins and probably about 30 feet of, maybe 40 feet of paracord. You can use paracord for a million different things, and the clothespins are for using the paracord as a clothesline to dry out my wet stuff. I've used that clothesline to dry out my tent. I've used it to dry out my clothes. It's very handy. What do you need for food on the TransAmerica Trail or on any other moto trip? I used to overpack the food, and the reality is food takes a lot of space. Now I travel with almost no food, and I just get food on the fly at Walmarts, gas stations, grocery stores, wherever you can stop and get food. Sometimes I'll stop at a Subway, I'll get a sub, and I'll carry it for a couple hours and eat that when I get to camp, or eat half of it the next morning for breakfast. There are a lot of ways to get by with food without having to carry a bunch of food. That said, I am a coffee snob, so if I do carry food prep stuff, it's usually because I want to be able to make coffee. So let me go through what I have here. So I have a camping plate, and this plate I've taken on both TransAmerica trail trips, and I never used it once. So I can't recommend it. Utensils for eating, probably good to have something along just in case, maybe a spoon or a fork or a spork. They don't take much space. I do recommend a Nalgene bottle. I always carry 1 or 2 Nalgene bottles full of spare water. The nice thing about the Nalgene bottles also is that they have measurements, so in case you need to measure some type of liquid, water, whatever, you have that should you need it. Now getting to the coffee. Here's the cup that I bring for coffee. It's an inexpensive Magellan cup that I got at Academy Sports. It does keep stuff warm or cold for an extended period of time. Works fine for coffee. You can shove other things in it, like instant coffee packets or other things if you're into instant coffee. For making coffee, I have this Stanley cup that doubles as a container. And I got it at Walmart for, I don't know, 14 bucks or less. When you buy it, there's a couple of plastic cups that come inside of it. I just discarded those. So inside of this, I have a scrub pad, just like a Brillo pad, sponge. Here I have some dish soap, which you can use obviously to clean this, but you can also use the dish soap for other things on your motorcycle sometimes if you need to. For example, looking for a leak in your tire. And here I have a cigarette lighter and a stove. This is an MSR Pocket Rocket stove. There are some Chinese knockoffs. I like this MSR. It's been fail-safe for me. Never had an issue. As you can see, it's tiny, and it screws on to one of these canisters. Screw it on, the little legs come up, and the pot sits right on top of it. Now the problem with all of this is that's a lot of space just for coffee. You've got 1 or 2 of these canisters. You've got this cup with everything inside of it that I just showed you. And you've got a cup like this. And then you've got to bring your coffee. Sometimes I also bring a portable hand grinder to grind my coffee. If I'm going to make the coffee that way, then I also need to bring a pour-over basket and some filters. So as you can see, that's a lot of space just for coffee. So I would say that this coffee equipment is an optional item. I mean, if you want to live in luxury, it's great. If you just need a caffeine kick in the morning, I would find another way to get that caffeine kick, like stop at a gas station the day before and buy a Red Bull or a canned coffee or something like that. So that's everything that I brought on my TransAmerica trail trips. Again, I've used this gear TransAmerica Trail, South Carolina Adventure Route, Smoky Mountain 500, a bunch of other motorcycle rallies and rides. It's all served me well. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments below. And if you liked this, if it was helpful, I hope you'll subscribe. Thanks, and I'll see you on the next video.